Marcus, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. Bright and early out there in California. I really
Sure is.
appreciate
Yep.
that.
Yeah, the non-alarm clock went off at 3:45 a.m. I just woke
Ooh,
up and I was ready to go.
is that a daily occurrence?
It's somewhere between 4 and 5 typically, but on a day where I've got like a lot of things lined up, I might just, my nervous system is kind of humming along, so I'm up a little bit earlier than that.
Wow. Okay. So I've been watching your videos for quite some time now. I do know that you get up early. Is this because it's a habit? Is this because you need to get your workouts in? Or is this because now like you have a family and you got to just take care of stuff before you drop the kids off at school? Like what's going on with that?
Um, Probably over the years, it's been a combination of all of those things. I think, before kids, I was an early riser, but not this early. I just wanted to, I like, I like having some time in the morning before the world is sort of up and humming along. I just find that that's always been just a really calming period for me to just like organize my thoughts. And, when my wife and I were just dating and, engaged, I was always up maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours before her, which is, generally around like the 5:30 or 6 o'clock time. There were also years where I was coaching early morning group fitness classes and had early morning clients. So that got me out of bed. I rarely wake up super early just to go work out. I did that in my competitive fitness days, but not so much anymore. And now, certainly with kids, I enjoy, having some early time. And the way my wife and I structure our days, it's easier for me to get up early, go to work, get a lot done, and then mid afternoon, I'm free to pick up the kids or go coach soccer practice. And I just feel like I've gotten a very solid chunk of, the day's work done so I can be present for that.
That's something that I want to start emulating. I feel like I say over and over again, I want to wake up early. I want to get stuff done. And it's just like, it's so hard. As a coach, do you like recommend that to people? Just wake up early, or is it kind of like, hey, just do you on your own schedule?
I Yes and no. I mean, I'm a big fan of people just creating consistent rhythms. I think that that's most important. Where they decide to create those rhythms is, a product of what's on their plate as a human, what kind of stresses, and some people can sleep in, and then they still have a lot of freedom to sort of build the day that they want. Some people have to commute a long way. Some people are struggling to find any time to move their bodies or to prepare healthy meals. So it's like, in some instances, waking up a little bit earlier is a tool. In other instances, it's sleep as much as you can because I know you're going to be up late doing this or your work is this way. Um, but I definitely think, for people in general, if they can prioritize getting some of their health um, checklist done earlier in the day, they're going to have a much greater likelihood of long term success. So people who work out in the morning versus work out in the evening, generally, in my experience, tend to have greater success just because as the day unfolds and as they've had many, many hours of stress or fatiguing activities, willpower, motivation, drive starts to go down and down towards the later hours in the day. Your body is generally wanting to wind down. I mean, we all have if our body's functioning normally, physiologically normally, we have a surge of hormones in the morning, stress hormones, cortisol, that get us awake and get us to go do stuff. That's kind of like you wake up because you have this surge in a hormone that's telling you, let's get out and go accomplish some things. So if we can pair that with movement or walking or cardio or lifting weights or something like that, versus when that wanes in the later hours of the day, you have this dip in cortisol, your body's starting to wind down. Maybe you start to get some melatonin production. It's like your body's wanting to kind of rest. And then you're going to go and hammer out a workout at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. after work. Kind of counterproductive to the natural circadian biology that we all have.
This is Marcus. This is exactly why I had you on. This is awesome because literally you called me out. I work out at like 6:30 p.m. and you're kind of saying like working out a little later in the evening is not quite as effective maybe as working out early in the morning.
It just might not be as optimal. I mean, we're super adaptable humans and creatures. We can adapt to almost any environment. And so, yeah, there's plenty of people that work out at night and crush it and they lead healthy, balanced lives. Um, However, if you were somebody that said, I work out in the evening, I struggle for consistency, the intensity of my workouts is kind of meh, I would say, okay, well, consistency makes sense that you'd struggle with consistency in the evening because you probably get to the 6 o'clock hour and 2 out of 5 times or 2 out of 10 times you've had a rough day at work or something
Mm-hmm.
came up and you had no control over it, right? When other people start asking for your time throughout the day, which is what happens when other people start to get up and you interact with individuals, they ask for your time in some way, especially kids, then you are now faced with this dilemma. Do I give them my time and sacrifice my own needs, or do I stay true to my needs, or I prioritize my needs and then maybe not show up for them? Whereas if it starts in the early part of the day, you go and knock out your thing, then you're never faced with that dilemma and you have a greater likelihood of being consistent so long as you do the simple preparation, which is like make sure you get to bed on time so that you can set yourself up for energy in the morning to go and do your workout. And then intensity, it's like I can't bring a level of intensity in my training that is producing meaningful results. Well, if you're tired at the end of the day, or you go into your workouts in the evening and you have to rely on some pre-workout mixture to like ramp up your nervous system, like, or to give you some stimulant effect like a caffeine, then you're really in a bad spot because you're just pushing that fatigue back and back and back to later parts of the week or the next day, and you're interrupting your sleep. So I would just look at, is it working or is it not working? And if it's working, then I don't tell anybody to change anything. If someone's like, I crush 5 workouts a week at 6 p.m., I sleep like a baby, I got good body composition, healthy weight management, I'm happy in life, I wake up at, whatever, like this time without the need for an alarm. I'm like, okay, well then keep doing it. Like, don't don't worry about, changing that.
Before we move on to the next topic, I'm really curious with you waking up so early. I know rest and recovery is really important. What time do
Mm-hmm.
you go to bed usually?
Sometime between 8:30 and 9 generally.
Okay.
So yeah, it's 7 to 8 hours a night of time in bed for me. And I will occasionally dip below that into the 6 to 7 hour range. And I used to really stress a lot about that, be like, oh no, I'm not getting, but I'm not trying to be a world class performer in sport. And so, the physical recovery isn't as, um, it's not as high a, like it's not, I don't want to say it's not as a high a priority. It's just not as, um, it doesn't make or break my workouts and my training
Yeah.
and my physical progress. Um, and there's certain days of the week where I don't have to be so mentally acute with my work, where I, just have things I need to do. But days where I really need to be sharp and maybe on camera, I can feel when I'm underslept. And I also
Amazing.
believe that there's going to be a time in my life later on where the kids are a bit more self sufficient and I will be able to push my sleep schedule back further. But it's just not that time in life for me right now. There's too much I want to do. And so I'm knowingly sacrificing probably, 60 minutes of sleep on average per night that may have a positive impact on me, but it's a trade off that I'm making.
Right. And I know we were talking before we started to record about being a new dad and working out with kids, and the schedule is very complex and confusing. And we can touch on that later. But first, I want to introduce the audience to you, Marcus Philly. If you can't tell, an amazing fitness and health coach. He's founder of Functional Bodybuilding, also the podcast Look Good, Move Well, and a CrossFit warrior, a champion. You were ranked what was the highest you were ranked in the world? Was it 12? Am I correct in saying that?
That was my best placement at the World Championships. Yeah,
Unbelievable.
which are just happening starting today or tomorrow
Oh, is it
for
really?
this year. Yeah, yeah.
Where's that located?
This year is the first year they're holding it in Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, I believe.
Damn.
So it was
And
like 10 years in or 7 or 8 years in Los Angeles, and then I think 6 or 7 years in Wisconsin. Now it's moved to Texas.
is CrossFit still exploding or has it possibly peaked? I know like over the last like decade, it's just kind of like taken off.
It probably globally, I don't know for sure. I mean, I know in the States it peaked a number of years ago, and has been on the decline in terms of active affiliate gyms, and probably just overall participation in the sport as well as just the fitness model in the US. And then also, I think that's true somewhat in Europe, but Asian countries, still seeing a pretty dramatic increase, and it's still um, quite popular and growing, I think, in interest from what I understand.
Interesting. Okay, so I for people listening to this, I have to ask like why the decrease? Is there a reason you can understand with that?
Yeah, I mean, my take is that first off, when so just for the listeners' background, like I was not only a CrossFit athlete and played the sport, but I owned a CrossFit gym. So I paid an affiliate fee, a license to call my gym a CrossFit gym. Basically, use the brand name on my door. And I coached. I was or I had certifications through CrossFit. I understood the method. I coached it, and then of course I competed in the sport that is called CrossFit or the CrossFit Games. And I was a very firm believer in many aspects of the system and the community. CrossFit was one, it's a brand name, it's a privately owned, brand that had a single founder who at one point had 100% ownership of the company. He called all the shots. It's a for-profit company. They are driven by, yeah, like wanting to make a difference in the fitness world, but also, turn a profit for this organization. They did so by opening up licensed gyms. So I paid like $2,000. I think today it's like $5,000 to call yourself a CrossFit gym. That number increased steadily over the years. They did education. So they certified hundreds of thousands of people in a 2-day weekend workshop that was, I think, $1,000 per participant. So they made a lot of money off of that. And these were not just trainers. So, but if you wanted to coach in a CrossFit gym, you had to do this
Hmm.
workshop. But then many enthusiasts did it. And then they had, other revenue streams through these CrossFit games where people would participate in online competitions. They would pay for registration fees to go to these events. They had sponsorship revenue, and all of that was super exciting. However, the method of CrossFit was built on a foundation of functional movement performed at high intensity across a broad spectrum of disciplines. So weights, gymnastics, cardiovascular fitness, calisthenics, you name it. You did a lot of stuff. You had to kind of do everything. And there was a competitive nature to it where it's like you do it as hard and as fast as you can. And that's how you produce results. On the one hand, that makes a lot of sense. Everyone knows you go to the gym, and if you don't work super hard, or if you don't work hard, you're not going to see results, right? No pain, no gain. Like
Mm.
nobody got really fit just kind of doing the easy thing. And CrossFit was beautiful in that it had these elegant workout designs and combinations of movements where people would go and do a seemingly, you know, easy workout when written on a piece of paper, and then but in the execution of it, they would have their mind blown. Like, whoa, that was the hardest thing I've done perhaps in my life, and this was a regular occurrence. And getting individuals to come in and experience hard work like that in a physical fitness environment was very unique to people. A lot of people hadn't had the upbringing of playing competitive sports where they learn how to push themselves physically. They got that first taste of it, or they got reacquainted with that
Hmm.
effort level after years of not playing sports and being an adult. And that was that one, it helped people start to see results for the first time in their fitness life. Two, it bonded people together. Hey, I feel great being next to you while I'm doing this super hard thing. I mean, challenging efforts, challenging things in life bring people closer together. And there's also this mentality that has been created by the fitness community over the years, this marketing effort, so to speak, where if it's hard, it must be good. And so when somebody gets into the gym and does a 5-minute workout that lays them out on the floor, they walk away feeling like, yes, I accomplished something. And so all of that was fantastic. It was getting people to lift more weights. Weightlifting became very, very popular, perhaps for the first time at this scale in human history, where people were now, instead of going to the gym in droves to do spin classes and boot camps, they were showing up to do Olympic weightlifting
Mm.
and back squatting. And that was a powerful, powerful thing. So I'm all in on all of this. And then 3, 4 years into the process of coaching many, many people, patterns start to emerge. We never can anticipate what's going to happen when something new and powerful hits mainstream, right? Like you didn't see the repercussions fully of what COVID did to our, economy and our culture and our children until 3, 4 years later, where it was like, oh, this is what happens when kids got isolated at home,
Mm.
when they were school age and they were supposed to be developing these interpersonal skills and they didn't. And now we have, COVID teenagers, right, that have struggle socializing and don't know how to form like solid relationships. And anyway, so we didn't know what we didn't know. And then 3 to 4 years into CrossFit, we started to see a phenomenon of like injury and burnout, which was like people made it to a certain point in CrossFit. And then it was like, oh, this is really hard to keep up with. This is
Mm.
hard for me to keep doing. I'm getting more aches and pains. I'm feeling a little bit run down. My body's not responding well in terms of weight loss. And it was kind of hard to pinpoint. And now at this stage, like I understand it a lot better, but essentially it kind of boiled down to unchecked intensity without somebody doing all the requisite things that a high level intensity based athlete would do leads to a number of problems, right?
Mm.
It's like if you go and train like a professional athlete, but then you're drinking 3 times a week and you're not cleaning up your diet and your sleep is poor and you sit at a desk all day, then there's something that starts to give. And
Mm.
that was happening for more people than we anticipated. And part of it became clear that it's partly the intensity, but also partly the complexity of some of the exercises that we're asking people to do. Maybe not everybody was meant to perform Olympic lifts and the snatch and clean and jerk. Perhaps the overhead squat is a little bit too challenging for most people. Maybe kipping pull-ups or kipping gymnastics are not optimal for the shoulder joint, done at high repetition and high intensity for somebody who sits at a desk and works on a computer all day. I don't know. The list kind of goes on. So we started to see that like there was this like big steep increase and then things started to become difficult and challenging. And then we saw burnout for people and injuries. And, the community has continued to try and solve some of those problems. Um, but alongside trying to solve those problems and optimize for the right method of training, which is
Mm.
what I'm doing now, I think, with functional bodybuilding, we also had the leadership of CrossFit sort of change hands and, kind of got disjointed. And so people realize there's problems, we need to fix them. The leadership doesn't seem to be addressing my needs as a gym owner. I'm gonna kind of back off, and then right, then a lot of the peak of users kind of hits, and now they're out looking for something different because they aren't finding it inside of CrossFit. So that was a super long-winded answer to your question,
I
but I think it
appreciate it.
touches on a lot of things that are why I do what I do today
Yeah, yeah.
and where I've come from. And I think for listeners who are getting into a fitness program or thinking about what they're doing, there's some cautionary tales that we can learn, lessons from this experience of like, whoa, there was a decade where this fitness method had made a lasting mark on the fitness community forever, and had saw hundreds of thousands and millions of people get in and do this stuff, and we learned a lot in a very short
Mm.
amount of time.
I appreciate you breaking it down like that. Makes a ton of sense. And just kind of like relating it to who I am as a person, like knowing if I signed up for CrossFit, I know the cost. So I'd be like, hey, I'm paying for this. I better show up. I want to be consistent. I'm going to show up every day, no matter if I'm feeling tired, if I got aches and pains and an injury. You probably got
Mm-hmm.
people like dogging you, hey, come in today, come on, push through it, push through it. A
Yeah.
lot of positives in that, but I can definitely also see the negatives in that. And it's a great segue. We're going to talk about your past and your history. Great segue, though, into what you're doing today with the founder of Functional Bodybuilding. Do you want to talk more about the company that you founded?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so in 2016, I had a business partner. I had business partners that we own our CrossFit gym together. And I was sort of at a stage where I felt ready to evolve our model for fitness delivery. And they felt more connected to what we were already doing. And it just felt like this is time for us to sort of go our separate ways. And so I sold my portion of the business back to them, and then opened up my own, started my own coaching brand. Um, and that coaching brand, where I saw the divergence in methods was, well, one, I think the group fitness thing was really powerful, and I started to see what I felt like were more individual needs of the customer. So I think I had an idea that we needed to have a model of fitness where people got more individual attention and still could leverage some of that group mentality or that group community benefit. So the vision was to open up a gym where all the customers came in and had a coach that sort of guided them uniquely. Whether it's you all follow this program, or you do this, this is your program, this is your nutrition plan, this is, we're going to have personal accountability check-ins this way. It was going to be more personalized fitness. And that was sort of the start of what was at that point Revival Strength was my brand, my business. And it was a coaching business that was delivered in person, but also digitally. So I had online clients that would get digital programs from me, Zoom check-in calls monthly. We would consult, and they would go and execute on their own.
Was that before
All
COVID?
Yeah, before COVID.
That's
This
freaking
was
awesome.
all
So you were
over.
prepared. That's awesome.
Yeah, in a way, we were very prepared. And so that was what started in 2017 was my business. It was more of a one-to-one coaching business.
Mm.
And the twist to that and how we arrived at functional bodybuilding was that I've always been and you know me through social media. I've been on social media for a decade sharing fitness content. Even before Instagram, I was a big Facebook guy. And then before Facebook, really, I was a big blogger. And big, I don't mean big in like terms of numbers, just like daily
Mm.
activity. I was writing a lot about my fitness journey and sharing it with people. And, what started out as 10 people that watched my stuff has turned into over 1 million people who, have opted in to watch more of my stuff. And it still blows my mind, but it all comes from the same drive to go out and explore and experiment and then share what I'm doing. And from 2010 to 2017 or 16 rather, the vast majority of my content was CrossFit. I just was doing CrossFit as a sport. in 2016, I finished my last competitive season of CrossFit, and I started to change my training methods, because if I'm not training for the sport of CrossFit, then there's no need to do some of the things that I'm doing because they're very specific to being good at the sport.
Hmm.
Rather, why don't I do some of these other training methods, which are great and lend themselves well to being strong, being fit, having good body composition, having good cardiovascular fitness? Like, why don't I do some of those things that I love as well that maybe are a little less taxing on the body than training like a games competitor? So that was sort of like bringing back bodybuilding into my life after CrossFit. And I showcased 2017 a lot of content of me doing CrossFit bodybuilding or bodybuilding CrossFit. And the social media audience, or the people who are paying attention, my followers, my blog subscribers or Facebook followers or now Instagram followers, they were a sounding board. I did this because I just wanted to share it with people, what I was doing. And it helped me process my own fitness journey. And it also helped me to formulate my thoughts as a coach. And then people were very intrigued by what I was doing. So in 2017, you hear about creators that get onto social media platforms and they kind of have this like, hockey stick type growth, like they're going viral, they're having their moment. Well, I kind of had a moment in 2017 and 2018. I was consistent before that, and I've been consistent after that, which is unique to some of these creators that have their moments. But those 2 years were a pretty big, steep curve where a lot of attention came because I was showcasing two different types of training. To kind of simplify it and bucket it into two categories, I was showing them at the same time.
Hmm.
Prior to this, nobody was showing bodybuilding and CrossFit in the same context. You were either a bodybuilder or you were a CrossFit athlete or you were a CrossFit coach. And CrossFit thought bodybuilding was, they poo pooed it, and bodybuilders love to hate on CrossFit athletes. And I was like, why? Like, why are we all arguing about this? Like, there's value to both of these things. And by showing that and then calling it functional bodybuilding, which was sort of an organic tagline or name that I just came up with on the spot on, I think it was like October 20th, 2016 Instagram post. I had a good pump going and I had done some muscle ups in the same workout. And I was like, oh man, I did what felt like bodybuilding and CrossFit. I'm like pumped like I used to feel, but I also did some functional stuff. It was like functional bodybuilding workout. Once I said that, the audience really responded well to it. Okay. All the while, I'm still building this individual coaching brand called Revival Strength. But I threw out this idea of functional bodybuilding. And over the preceding next 3 to 6 months, people were just very interested. How do I do functional bodybuilding? I want to do functional bodybuilding. And I said, well, you can hire me as your coach. Well, I had 60 clients at the time. I was almost at my cap. I had hired one or two other coaches, and they could only take on so many clients. And then there were still hundreds, if not thousands of people who wanted to do this stuff, but didn't want to pay a premium for one-to-one coaching.
Hmm.
And that was when, my now business partner and close, friend approached me and said, hey, would you ever consider doing a group program, like an online group program? And I was very against it because I had just left the CrossFit group fitness business because I believed more in this one-to-one method of coaching. So I said, no, I'm okay. I don't think I want to do that. And she was persistent, and she kept coming back to the idea that, hey, you know what, we could add value to people if we just did this thing. And eventually the noise kind of got so loud that I was like, okay, I can't ignore this. Let me write a training program. I'll call it essentially functional bodybuilding. I'll make it for 12 weeks and people can sample it. And once they're done, they're done. And they can either hire me as their coach or, just take the lessons and go and apply them in some other format. And when I launched that with my partner in April of 2017, it got I think 300 um, participants in the first round, and we sold that over the course of 6 days. So over 6 days, I sold 300 copies of this training program for $200 a pop, and I was like, you know, suddenly I was $60,000 richer, and I was like, good God, that's about as much as I'll make in 6 months of coaching individual clients. Like
It's
that's
amazing.
that's incredible. Um, but more than just like the financial gain of that, it was, damn, there's a lot of people that really want to do this thing. And then the preceding 12 weeks that people were doing this program, it was just very clear to me that this functional bodybuilding thing was really making an impact, and this delivery method also was having a positive impact on people. So we kind of, I didn't go all in. And if I have one, I don't know, regret or thing that I wish I had really done in business, was to recognize that this was our moment.
Mm,
And most of our business now that is functional bodybuilding, where we deliver online training programs, was built on the heels of the next 24 months. And I think we could have gone harder and invested more into that process. I didn't, at the time, I didn't understand, paid advertising and media. We did all this organically. We had a very successful email, newsletter campaign. We were able to use organic social media posts to drive people into the program, but there were opportunities to reach probably 5 to 10 times the audience had we known how to leverage some other, marketing avenues at a time where it was pretty easy to buy, eyeballs and target very, very directly. So, but anyway, we did, I slowly ramped up my resolve to go all in on this thing. It took me probably two more cycles of this 12-week launch cycles, where it was like, okay, we sold 300, then we sold 600, then we sold 1,000. It was like, oh, okay, this is actually this is kind of a real thing. This is a serious thing. I should really pay attention to this. And maybe 9 months later than I should have been really focused and paying attention to it. But we built a very big worldwide community of people who were calling themselves functional bodybuilders now, and who were looking to me and to our company as this resource for training method that combines two categories of training that were previously at odds with each other. And that became functional bodybuilding as a company. And we have been delivering training programs and coaching essentially underneath that brand ever since. And today, functional bodybuilding is still committed to the same thing. And we have pretty much all of our services delivered under a single online subscription, where people can come and learn how we train, get resources on, mobility, nutrition, training, education videos, all of that.
that's an amazing story. I really appreciate that. I'm blown away that it's 2017 and people still haven't combined bodybuilding and CrossFit. It's just like,
Yeah.
wow. Sometimes some things are just so obvious and you're just like, how did no one see this? So congratulations on doing that. And then like I'm thinking, maybe you could have had 5 to 10x the followers and
Mm-hmm.
subscribers and stuff, but who knows where you'd be today if that were to
That's
happen. Things
true.
might be
You're right.
different. And like I told you before we started to record here, I think what you have going on for you is like the type of coach you are. You are awesome. For people that are already kind of enamored with this conversation, I started to follow you probably a year or two ago. And the thing I loved about you is like how you coach, and very digestible, very relatable. I will say you are somewhat intimidating when you see a guy with his shirt off. You probably have like single digit body fat, I'm guessing, and you're just jacked and ripped, and you're like, you are the person that many people want to get to and they just don't feel like it's achievable. But the way
Mm.
you talk to people and the way you coach people, you make it feel like it's achievable and you break it down into step 1 and step 2. And I can tell you are also like an individual coach because it's like you are talking to people individually. You have so much amazing content. I'm not just saying this to blow smoke. I'm actually being really honest for people listening to this. Please follow you. Unbelievable. You have 1 million followers. That's just freaking awesome. I can't imagine what that feels like. And this is a question I was going to ask like perhaps later in the podcast, but we're touching on it. Like, one, how does it feel to have 1 million followers? And two, like, mental health. You doing good with the mental health and stuff? Like I can imagine the pressure that you have and you're taking your shirt off all the time, like body image and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that definitely couldn't handle that. And you seem
Mhm.
to be doing well. I kind of want to like peel back the curtain on who Marcus Philly is.
Yeah, well, I appreciate those questions. And to start with, yeah, 1 million followers was a big milestone without a doubt. And I don't know that I really ever believed I would get there. I mean, you know, there were periods of big growth and then periods of actual no growth and a few periods where we lost followers over months.
Mm.
Um, and it kind of came in waves that we weren't expecting. And sometimes it felt like the direct result of hard work. And sometimes it felt like an accident. A great accident was COVID. COVID happened. And because I was a gym owner and I had a lot of equipment and I happened to live in a sunny neighborhood and I had a nice backyard and I was able to put all this equipment and have all the access to these tools in my backyard where the sun was shining and I was tan and lean. My videos just crushed during that period of time. Um, but that is a good segue into the concept of like, mental health as a creator, um, specifically a creator who, is often shirtless or is getting attention because of, in part, how they look. And I always felt like, I want people to, I'm not so concerned about why people come to the channel, but I want them to stay for the quality of the content. And as a matter of fact, I'm comfortable doing whatever it takes to get someone's attention. And now
Mm.
that obviously is not, that's not an absolute like statement. I have limits and things that I don't feel comfortable doing to get people's attention, but it's a broad, I will go broad, with the effort to get someone's attention because I really believe in what I'm saying and the message and the product on the other side of it.
Mm.
So, hey, if I gotta take my shirt off or, if that sells or gets somebody to click, then I'm okay with that because I know that if I get their attention or I believe strongly that when they're here, they're going to get some value that is more than just, seeing a naked body. They're going to get information, they're going to get education, they're going to learn something, and then they're going to be able to hopefully go and apply it to their life. Um, but it hasn't always been a positive uh, loop, feedback loop that has enriched my life or given me peace, calm, sense of confidence, and just a general positive mental health state. Um, there is partly, I've 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 have gone through plenty of struggles with mental health as an entrepreneur and partly as a content creator, where each new level of success has created inside of me it's just moved the goalposts for what I consider to be a next level of success. Now entrepreneurship is unique. I mean, it affords me the ability to grow infinitely, so there's no cap to what I can do, unlike somebody who might be in a you know a W-2 employment position where it's like, hey, I have a job, this is it. I might be able to get this level of you know compensation increase over the coming years, but there's a cap to what I'm not going to I'm not a C-level executive, I'm a manager, I might be able to move up a little bit, but this is it. Whereas for me, it's, we could sell 100,000 programs tomorrow and 200,000 the next year and so forth. And it could grow, it can go, it can grow. But with that also comes this sort of like, there's no, you've never achieved the thing. You've never reached the mountaintop. And as somebody who maybe grew up in an environment where that was reinforced, where it's like, oh, you want to achieve more. And I guess our culture is like that.
Mm.
I have found that with each new level of success, it's like, okay, well, we need more. So back to the million followers, it's like, you asked me 4 years ago, hey, what's going to feel like when you get to a million? Like, it's going to be, if I make it to a million, then like I'm set, like that's a dream, and now we're at a million. It felt like a massive accomplishment. I'm still proud of it, but it's like, well, when are we going to get to 1.1? Are we still growing? Is the content still hitting? Are we still engaging people? There's still more to be had.
Mm.
It's like, hey, we made our first million as a company. Oh my gosh, like I never thought I'd make $1 million in my life, right?
All
Like
right.
that's incredible. It's like, but how do we get to 1.5? How do we
Mm.
get to 2? How do we get to 2.5? Like, the goalposts keep moving. And, as you accumulate more in like a business, there's just more at stake. Because in order to fulfill on this, you got to have more people. And then there's more people at stake. And just last year or earlier this year, I had the experience as a business owner of having to essentially like or consolidate aspects and parts of my business and separate with other parts of my business, and see a lot of good people basically leave and not be part of my organization anymore. And that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in business. And it came in the same year that we hit 1 million followers, in the same year that we hit new milestones. And it's like, so there's a lot that happens. And I ran anxious most of my life. I felt like there was, I worked from a mindset of like, there's something to lose. There's more to lose than there is to gain, like a scarcity, a fear mindset,
Mm.
and having kids and owning a home and running a business and seeing fluctuations that happen, and not having 10 years of experience as an entrepreneur, but only having 5 years of experience as an entrepreneur. Like, I don't know what's going to happen next year. I don't know what's going to happen the year after that. And last year I was pretty miserable when it came to like, how would I wake up each day and go to bed each day? It was from this place of fear and scarcity, like, oh my gosh, this is all going to go away. On top of that, there's this body image thing where I think, in my years as a CrossFit athlete, I had awareness of my body, and I was, conscious of like, I want it to look a certain way, but I was so focused on being you know, a performance-based athlete and, driven by the sport of CrossFit, that aesthetics were not as important. They were kind of a byproduct. Um, During that COVID era or COVID phase, I went through a big body transformation as I realigned some priorities and started, experimenting with different training and nutrition methods. And it got a ton of attention, as I already described, where I had this like sort of heightened focus on my body image that I hadn't had in probably a decade. I had that when I was in my early 20s, and it did a number to my mental health then. And then here I am, a much more knowledgeable and accomplished coach and athlete. And I was kind of going through the same cycle again, where it's like, oh, I'm leaner. I I have the single digit body fat. People are paying more attention to me. Oh, I got to keep up this, I got to keep this up. But I'm doing great. Everything's fine, you know, and it's not like you suddenly feel the negative impacts of doing this for too long, or under fueling yourself, or trying to diet too hard. It's like a slow kind of decline in sort of energy, vitality, subtle symptoms and health impacts. And then it's like a year later, 2 years later, you're like, wow, like something's off. And it wasn't till like last year I looked at myself and I was like, you know, I competed in CrossFit about 190 pounds, muscular, pretty lean, athletic. At some points, I was heavier than that. And here I am at the end of 2003, and I weigh 178 pounds. You know, most of that I've lost in the last 5, 6 years is muscle. It's like I lost some body fat, but I was lean back when I competed. I've lost muscle. I'm eating less. I'm not moving as much. I've kind of like my fire has kind of gone down and dwindled. And now I'm
Mm.
not burning as bright. And I feel it. I feel it just like all over. And, but I was scared to like put weight back on, scared to change my body, scared to take a risk. Hey, I got to be on camera. Hey, I got to take my shirt off today and film 5 reels. Like, oh, I feel a little soft. I had pizza last night, retaining water. Like I'm seeing all these little things in the mirror. This is all like my own personal perception. And, most people don't see a difference when they look. So I had to make a conscious choice to say, okay, I'm going to start to put some weight back on. I'm going to try and rebuild myself. And it was it's almost, we're coming up on a year since I sort of made this conscious choice to shift. And there's been huge learnings and lessons and wins. There's been challenges. There's been scary moments where I've seen the scale start to go up, scary moments where I've, been on camera and I've seen post-production edits and been like, oh, Jesus, like, it's funny, you're, as somebody who worked for Element, you're aware that this like, national TV campaign is out right now, this commercial that features me. And I remember filming that and thinking that day, like, number of times that day, like, oh, I don't feel good in my body. I don't know how I'll feel on camera. Like I had my shirt off for the workout, you know, and it's funny. I like see the commercial now. I see it run back and I'm like, damn, I look great. Like what the hell was I thinking? Like, it's just me getting after it. My body looks capable and healthy and functional and lean. But I remember that day, it did not feel that way.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, I mean, again, another long-winded answer to a very simple question, but yeah, it's or a straightforward question. It's not a simple answer because it's complicated. But mental health has been something that in the last year has I've come a long way with. I am in a much better balanced place as a human being, much happier, connected to my family, positive about work, less fearful, um, overcoming some major body dysmorphia or, body image um, narratives that have been playing in my head for the last several years. And I also know that it's like, I didn't, no one's immune to this stuff and that it can come in waves. And I'm very proud of the work that I've done with, done myself, done with my wife, done with my, therapists, how much I've opened up to people in my life to sort of walk this journey. And that at the end of the day, it will positively impact the people I coach and the people that I'm trying to serve with my business, because that's how it's always been. Functional bodybuilding came out of the need to solve a problem. And here I am solving another problem in my life. And I know that it's going to impact my business and the people that, I coach in a positive way too.
I'm super appreciative of that answer. I really do appreciate that. And I'm taking notes as you're talking. And I think people forget you're human, right? Like when they see you on Instagram or YouTube or wherever the content is, first and foremost is they just see someone over the internet. And then
Mm-hmm.
second of all, they see someone who's just absolutely ripped, jacked, think your life has been perfect this whole time. You're quite the athlete. You have a million followers. You're doing well for yourself. But when you just take a moment to think about it, it's like your business in a way relies on how you look and how you perform. And that goes back to what you're eating, like keeping up with your workouts, trying, like, I can't imagine the pressure of not just my business, but also people that work for you
Mm-hmm.
are relying on you to perform.
Mm.
Like, Literally I can't
Yeah,
imagine that.
it's interesting. My videographer, media producer Nate has actually just in the last like 6 months, um, I have everybody who trains hard, like we all go through little aches and pains and injuries sometimes. Um, but he has like I've gone through enough of them in the last couple of years where now he's like very mindful of me and my body, and he's like he'll like make mention of like, hey, we can't get you injured. Like he knows how much of an impact it has on his life
Yeah.
when now I have to film content in a different way, or I can't do certain things, or we can't set up this type of video shoot because my shoulder's bothering me. And so like he'll be like, hey, let me get that for you. Like we're like doing some, you know, most of the time when things get hurt around here, it's I've trained, I've cooled down, then we go film content, and then we got to pick up gear and move out into the floor. And it's like I'm not really prepped for it, and I'm already fatigued, and something like tweaks when and so he's moving things around for me. But it is interesting. It's like people in this company do rely on my body to function a particular way. It doesn't make me go through life like fearful, like, oh gosh, I can't get injured. I mean, I'm mindful. I don't want to hurt because I don't want to hurt. I've been injured enough times that it's just for self-preservation. I'm trying to avoid these things. Um, but I could see from the outside, somebody might think the way that you're thinking. It's like, gosh, that must be a lot of pressure to like think about your body and keeping it in shape and doing all these, it's like, yes and no. Like all that came before I had a responsibility to this business. Like I, I honestly believe that if you shut the cameras off and you shut down functional bodybuilding, you know, and I never was on Instagram again, and then 5 years from now, you tune back into my life, I don't think I would be that much different in terms of my body. I don't think I would, you wouldn't show up and be like, oh, look at him, his dad bod. Like you just let it go. I was like this before the cameras were on. I'll more than likely be like this after the cameras are off. I am deeply committed to the training and the things that go into getting me the body and the physicality that I have.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're authentic and it comes through in every single piece of your content. And that's why you're so relatable. So, like, keep up the amazing work. And I want to hit on something you just said is like, you're happier now. I want to know how the hell are you happy? And like, because I'm sure there's people listening to this that are struggling with their body image, with their weight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing this is just a guess. I'm guessing you have a good relationship with food. I struggle with that consistently. I'm sure a lot of my listeners struggle with that consistently. Like, and I can't, like I said, I can't imagine having an Instagram account, my shirt's constantly off. I'd be questioning, should I eat this piece of pizza? Should I have this cake
Mm-hmm.
tonight? Like I would be driving myself absolutely insane.
Mm.
How do you have a good relationship with food and nutrition? And how have you been able to maintain happiness?
That's a great question. I mean, it starts with the acknowledgement that I have not always had a good relationship with food. And I think going through really dark times with food have given me perspective and helped me to create a healthier relationship later on. Um, and also coaching this for years and trying to make sense of it for people has also helped me tremendously. When I was in college, I was a tutor for, you know, basic sciences, math, so physics, chemistry, biology, calculus. And part of the reason I got into tutoring in the first place was because I remember hearing somebody tell me, if you can teach it to somebody else, then you know it really well. And
Mm.
I was like, well, I want to know this stuff better than everybody. this is my way of going and making sure that I'm the best student in the things that I do, is because I can teach it to other people. That is proven to be so true in the health and fitness world. If I can teach somebody else about developing a healthy relationship to food, it means that I have to fully understand the obstacles people face, the misunderstandings, the psychology, the information, the misinformation, and just gain enough perspective. And what are the tools that I use to do that? You know, part of it is objective, measurable science. I've measured my body and other people for months and months and years and seen the impact of going and eating 5,000 calories for 3 days in a row of pizza, beer, and you name it. And then seeing, okay, well, what measurable impact did this have on my physique, on a body, on my weight, on all the things? It's like, oh, it doesn't have as big an impact as people like to make it out in their head. And when the scale goes up, it comes back down, and it's like, okay, like, so there's part of it that is just being a data driven scientist.
Hmm.
And then there's another part that is, you know, it's interesting because, yeah, having a lot of attention on my body has it presents some obstacles. But the other thing is that it also is a great sounding board. When I look at myself and I'm like, God, I feel terrible in my skin. And on the same day, I get 5 comments saying, dude, like, you should go and compete in a bodybuilding show. You look amazing. It's like, huh, okay, yeah. Like, what do people see and what do I see? Why is there a gap between what other people see and what I see? And how relatable is that to everybody? You know, and I don't pretend like my body image issues or obstacles that I have are the same as everybody else's. They're not. Somebody looking at themselves and they're overweight or obese and they hate what they see in the mirror and they can't stop paying attention to their love handles. Like, I don't pretend like I'm in the same category as them, but what is the same is that what you see in the mirror and how it makes you feel and what other people see isn't always congruent. It's rarely the same. So back to the question of creating a good relationship with food, I've also learned what are the most important things that we can do on a consistent basis to positively impact our body. It's like, hey, if I do these things really well, then I have room to do these things, quote unquote, unhealthy habits. I've heavily investigated what it means to eat perfectly versus what it means to not eat perfectly. I've gone through this experimentation process of, I used to be a super, super strict, like, gluten-free, low sugar, high protein, lots of veggies, like the highest quality. If it wasn't high quality, it didn't go in my body. I didn't eat treats. And then I spent time intentionally eating something processed treat every single day inside of the context of like my macros or whatever I needed to be almost negligible difference, right?
Wow.
It's like, okay, so I've had this experience. Like, I've eaten pizza and been really lean and in great shape. I've eaten vegetables and meat and olive oil and, low carb and the same outcome. What are the things that actually move the needle? And I've gotten very measurable and prescriptive about that. And I also, have an understanding that, like, um, nothing changes in one day. Nothing changes at one meal. This is about developing habits and routines and looking at the end of the month, what happened at the end of this month and how many days and how many meals and how many calories and how many grams of protein and, what's the sum total and average of all the past 30 days. And I definitely am subscribing to the 90-10 or, 85-15 rule on that, where it's like, if you hit it 85 to 90% of the time over 30 days, which basically is like 25 out of 30 days, or I don't know, 75, uh, excuse me, 20, yeah, like 75 meals out of whatever,
Mm.
90 meals that you have, 3 meals a day for 30 days. Like if you're nailing it, you've got wiggle room. You can have 15 meals or 10 meals that are pizza and a cookie and beer and hot wings and whatever it is you want, because you're truly living what is a balanced life. Now, I'm all about putting actual numbers and metrics to all of this stuff. Somebody who tells me like, hey, I kind of live the 80-20 lifestyle. I'm like, well, an 80-20 mentality versus an 80-20 objective, like, data driven approach don't always align.
Mm.
Somebody who's like, I'm 80-20 is basically every meal, they're like, it's okay for me to have, this, a bite of this or a little piece of that because I'm 80-20. And I'm like, well, when you do it this way, you're actually 60-40. And that's like a D in school. And if you want D results, that's fine. But I know you don't. I think you want more. And you're actually not being honest with yourself as to how frequently you're doing this because you're not tracking it. I don't want you to get out of this mindset that like you can have both, but there's a limit to how much you can have and expect other results. And that's ultimately what I want people to understand, is creating a healthy relationship with food is understanding what it takes to get the result that you want. Because it's when people have this disconnect between this is what I want, but this is what I'm doing food wise, and they're not matching up, that drives them nuts. They sometimes think that if they eat this way, they should have this result.
Mm.
And I'm here to show them, actually, you need to eat this way to have this result. But it doesn't make you a good person to have this result. You could be a good person over here. You could actually be an amazing person over here. But this is what it's going to look like when you eat this way. And then they get to decide, like, oh, like I can have pizza 3 times a week, but I can't have pizza 3 times a week and look like this type of person very easily.
Mm.
That's just really difficult for me when I eat pizza 3 times a week. When I eat pizza once a week, oh, I can do that. Okay. Like, then let's create that pattern and that lifestyle for yourself. And that improves people's relationship to food dramatically, is when they recognize I can have this and get the result I want. But when they're like, I want this result and I'm doing it this way and they're not lining up, then that's where it just creates all of this anxiety around like, I don't know what to put in my body to get me what I want. I'm scared. I'm nervous. It's creating distress. I'm an emotional human. I want this thing because it looks amazing. It's craveable. I'm going to eat it. Shit, did I just mess up my goals? Like, I don't know. Fuck it. It's too complicated. This thing doesn't work for me. And then they go down a shame spiral, which then makes them want to eat more of the bad thing because that's comforting to them and it gets them to stop feeling for a moment. And if we could create this, like, shorten the gap between this is what it really takes and this is what you want, and let's merge them together, you know, that's a beautiful thing. And what I work closely with individuals on, most people think they have to be a monk to look like the way they want, and anything, if they don't live like a monk in terms of their diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep, etc., that they may as well just say F it and eat whatever the hell they want. And so there's kind of this on-off switch. And of course, when they're off, their body doesn't look and feel the way they want to look. And I try and teach them that to look and feel the way they truly want to feel, it is not on or off. There's some place in the middle that's a much happier medium. And it starts with developing a lot of awareness and then showing them through practice, like, you can do this, you can do it this way. And that's it.
You are speaking directly to me. I'm sure you're speaking to a lot of people listening to this. For somebody, I am very black and white when it comes to my nutrition. It's like, let's just say I make this random goal. I want to get a six pack. Summer's coming, want that beach body, want to look good. Boom. That I make the decision. There are like little carbs, high protein, work out this much, do this, do that. It's a very up and down, somewhat unsustainable relationship with food and nutrition. This, you are explaining why it is so important to have a coach in your life, especially when you have nutrition and fitness goals, no matter what they are. Not just to guide you on what you can't eat or things you should cut out, but also the things you can eat and how often. And if you want to achieve these results, this is where you have to go. This is speaking a lot to me. I'm going to reach out after this. I want to work with you because I feel that there could be a huge benefit in this. I feel like people don't understand the benefit of coaching, just period. Like I can do this myself. They're really stubborn and like sometimes it's like, well, just look where that's gotten you, right? And
Yeah.
to work with a coach and to hear how you can relate to people because you've dealt with these struggles yourself, I think means like so much more. You're not just guy who's just ripped and jacked and follow me, listen, look at me now, listen to my advice. You've been there, you've
Mhm.
gone through it, you've had your struggles, and I can appreciate that. So when I come to you with my struggles, you know exactly what I'm saying. You're going to help guide me through it. um Question I want to ask you is, when someone comes to you, you mentioned this, like they're scared to have a conversation with themselves. They don't like what they see in the mirror.
Mhm.
I imagine you get this all the time when people come to, hey, Marcus, like I don't like where I'm at. Um, how do you respond? What's like the first thing you say to somebody that's just struggling to look at themselves in the mirror?
Usually something like, that must be really hard. I know how that can feel. That must feel so hard every single day to have that mindset. And then likely something encouraging, like, because you are beautiful, and the fact that you can't see that right now is, I'm sure it feels awful each day. And what would it feel like if you could look in the mirror and see a strong, confident, powerful human being? What would that feel like? And we just like play that scenario out. It's like, what would it feel like to have that? Okay. And then start to close the gap between, like, well, here's where you are today. And to get to that place where you look and see a confident human, isn't it might not be as far away as you think.
Hmm.
And it's not likely that you're going to feel that when you achieve a certain look. It's going to come when you do the behaviors repeatedly over and over again that are moving you towards that look. And that could happen 2 weeks from now.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I've gotten the body that everyone thinks would make them happy many times and been unhappy when I've seen it, because I wasn't living in alignment with what I know was like the healthiest, best version of myself. And I've looked in the mirror and felt fucking great when I haven't objectively looked the leanest or the best, because I'm doing everything right, and I'm doing the behaviors right. I'll give a great example of this. I talked about this like weight journey I've been on this last year. So 177 pounds in October of 2023. So I purposely putting on weight, trying to build muscle, trying to build my body back up. And right around the 183, 184 mark, I felt like, oh damn, I'm looking as I'm looking great. Like everything, that was just me kind of like refilling out my muscles and just feeling myself better. And then from 184 onward has been kind of a grind, and putting on a little bit body fat here and there. And, it's been a little bit harder mentally So I'm in the 185, 186 range a few weeks ago. It's kind of where I've just been. Went on vacation last week, ate all the things imaginable, drank beer 5 out of the 7 nights we were away. Had several nights where I was like almost like intentionally, it was just like, I'm eating 8 s'mores that my kids are making right now on the fireplace. Like we went out to, Vietnamese and I had 3 bowls of pho. Did I
Hell
need three
yeah.
bowls? No, I just ate a massive amount of food. Like, and I came back and I stood on the scale on Monday morning and I weighed in at 192 pounds. And I haven't seen 190 plus on the scale since I was an elite CrossFitter. Like it's been a long time since I weighed that much. And I felt soft and I was puffy and I was just like in a mental headspace of like, you know, I looked in the mirror and I was not that happy with what I was seeing and just how I was feeling. I mean, I had a great trip. We had a wonderful trip. I loved all those food experiences, but 5 of them in a row where it was kind of like almost like I had that like, well, I kind of hit the fuck it button a little bit. Like everything's, I'm already doing all this anyway. I may as well just like live it up for a few days, which I know people go through that cycle on a monthly or a weekly basis. Yeah, I'm doing it once every 6 months or once a year, that kind of thing. It's a different scope, but it put me in a very bad mental place on that Monday because I'm like, well, the vacation's over. It's back to normal life. I probably am going to go film some content in a couple days. And here I am like, I just not feeling awesome. 3 days later, healthy strategies, eating my normal food, getting back to a rhythm and a routine. Has my body changed dramatically in 3 days? No. But I looked in the mirror yesterday after a workout, a little pumped up, flexing a little bit. And I was just like, I just felt like a freaking hero. Like I was just so proud of myself and just feeling so good and confident and just like in this such a positive mental state after 3 days of just doing what I know is good for me, getting to sleep on time, eating my meals, hitting my protein, moving, walking, training, like all the things. And that is just like, you know, I'm again, like the body hasn't changed dramatically. I'm not like at the leanest I've ever been. Like I am still, you know, I could still pick apart parts of my physique if I looked in the mirror. But because I'm like in this routine of just making the decisions and not drinking a beer each night and not going back for my third, fourth, fifth s'more at the fireplace, at the fire pit, or, you know, asking or just eating, all the rest of my kids' noodles that they left on their plate. Like just by just making some decisions like that, I'm just like, oh, I feel amazing. And that again is where I like to coach people to is like, we're going to get you feeling confident when you look in the mirror, which is really the most impactful result out of this whole thing is like what you look like versus how you feel when you look at yourself. That's what matters the most. When you wake up and you're like, I feel good about myself, I feel confident, I have a positive mindset, and that is everything. And we can get there sooner than you think because you don't need to lose 20 pounds to feel that. You need to lose a few pounds, and you need to lose a few pounds doing repeated positive behaviors that you feel confident you can repeat for a long time. And now you're like, God, I'm in it. I'm doing the thing. And this isn't like some unsustainable, crazy fat loss that I am never going to be able to sustain. It's like Marcus has got me lifting weights. He's got me tracking my protein. I'm mindful of eating, choosing good quality foods, and I'm walking, 8 to 10,000 steps a day. And that's the biggest lever that I can pull to improve my activity level. And fuck yeah, I'm doing it. And then you just start to you feel the thing that people believe they're going to feel when they get the body of their dreams. But it's, you know, no, it happens when you start to repeat the behaviors that And I've seen it with like my media producer, this guy Nate, you know, he joined our staff 260 pounds. He's down to 200 pounds.
Wow.
And you would say, oh my God, like what a transformation. You must feel amazing. Nate felt amazing at 230. He felt amazing at 240. Why? Because he was doing the thing that he knew was making a difference.
Mhm.
Like I've seen his confidence go up and up and up, but like he was feeling amazing along the way because it was the process that he was like, I'm in it. I know this is going to work for me. I can do it. Like, and that was available to him after just a couple months, not after a year, because it's taken a year to make this transformation.
Yeah, that's so inspiring. You don't have to wait 6 months to a year to think you're going to feel good. You start feeling good sooner than later because of the decision you're making. It's like enjoying the journey. It's about the journey, not the destination. And so if
Oh,
you
no
can
doubt.
feel good during that journey, what a difference that makes. I'm really kind of curious. So when you went on vacation, you stepped on that scale on that Monday. Was it instant regret or was it I got this? Like I had a good time, no worries, I got this.
It was it was not regret. It was more of like, okay, here's another data point, and I I could also appreciate some of what what that allowed me to do. Was like I it allowed me to be more relaxed, be more flexible, to experience like several meals that I will not soon forget, at restaurants that were, like the regret was like on the first couple days of the trip where I was still like in more of a regimented eating mindset, like that I didn't eat the thing that people ate. I'm
Mm.
like, oh, I skipped that meal, or I kind of tried to skirt around that meal because I thought that that was like I could remain more in control on this trip, when in reality, like this trip, these 7 days, even if I ate like a total asshole for 7 days in a row, like I have developed enough good routines and habits that, that's not going to make an impact on my long term, health and physique and body. If anything, it's just going to add to a growing list of like great experiences that I can have.
I want to be respectful of your time. I could talk to you all day, and the outline I sent you, you can pretty much blow it up because we need to get the most of it. But I love where we went with this. Um, I need to ask you this question for being a new dad. And you're a dad and you're really involved with your children's life, and I absolutely love that. If I came to you as you're my coach and I said, "Hey, listen, like my struggles with health and eating and nutrition and stuff like that, and I got to start feeding my son and future possible kids, like how what would you tell me? Like how do I not translate that to my kids? And like are you very cognizant of what your kids are constantly eating and stuff? And I really ask that because a lot of like what's marketed to children is just like the stuff we grew up on is just like terrible sugary cereals and
Mm-hmm.
breakfast is that's the best way to start your day with all the sugar and stuff. It's crazy. So like
Mm.
as far as like how you introduce foods to your kids and how you handle their nutrition and what they take, like I would absolutely love to know your relationship as far as that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a tough one to unpack, but I'll do my best. And, I'll just start out by saying I don't have it all figured out. However, um, one thing I do know is, or that I believe strongly, is that creating I'm, I'm not trying to like force a certain relationship with food onto my kids. I think what is important is that I foster, we foster a lifestyle where they are active and that they love to move. Um, because one thing is absolutely for sure is that it is the balance between people's activity and their energy output as compared to their energy input, which has the biggest impact on their health. And that most people are not active enough and don't move enough relative to how much they eat. So as time has gone on with the kids, like I've kind of gotten into this. I'm more focused on like, is their energy being channeled towards movement and play and being active, and then trusting that their hunger cues and the things that they need for fuel will surface when they need to. Like, I'm not going to impose upon, like we've tried to, and I love the idea of like eating like 3 square meals a day, but it's like imposing that on them has not worked.
Hmm.
And it adds some like, it makes it difficult for us to like schedule certain things. But at the same time, it's like, they're not hungry right now. Why am I trying to force them to eat something? That's creating a relationship with food that's not positive. It's like, I want to be playing right now. It's like,
Great point.
yeah, I don't want you guys to think that, sitting down to eat is more important than play.
Yeah.
um, the next part is like this idea that like sugar is bad for kids. Um, you know, if I see a kid who's overweight and obese, then I mean, one, that's really sad to me because I know that that kid has not had play prioritized enough, or they haven't had enough opportunities to play, be active, because kids just want to be active. They will run and just put thousands of steps on, and just go nuts without any reason to, just because that's how they are. Um, but sugar's not the culprit here, you know. I mean, kids are burning sugars all day. Like that is their preferred fuel source. And kids don't need as much protein as adults need, for proper muscle development and growth. Like they need a fraction of it, and they can get that pretty easily. And these kids are growing and they're developing muscle tissue, on low protein diets. So they don't need to like focus on like packing their diets full of, chicken breasts and all kinds of protein. Yeah, I like to sneak in a little protein into their pancakes in the morning, but that's good. Like if they eat a little bit of cheese or a little bit of yogurt, or if I can sneak some, you know, if my kids, one of my kids likes bacon, she asked for bacon 3 or 4 nights a week. Great. Like that's it. That's how we're going to get some of our protein. And then there's protein in some of the other foods that they're eating. And oh, they like a bar. They like a bar from time to time. Okay, here's a protein bar, and they like it. They eat it. Like that's fine. Is that as good as eating, you know, steak and broccoli and peas? And not as good, but it's fine, right? And so I'm just trying not to like make a big deal out of it. My wife and I are, and I've had to get better at this because I have like these, you know, hangups around my own food that come out. And mostly the way it comes out with my kids is I'm, I don't know, I have this like thing about being wasteful. Like if I make something for them and they don't eat it, like I put out these subtle signals that dad's disappointed. And that is just something I absolutely have needed to work on, is like, why the hell am I putting that on them? Like I made something for them. They had a thought that they wanted it. Turns out they didn't want it. Okay, no problem. What do you want? Like, let's try again. You know, I'm not hungry. Okay, like go play. When you are hungry, come on up. If you get hungry when we're brushing teeth and going to bed, then you'll have to wait till the morning because we're not going to go and make something for you right now. Like we'll have a big breakfast tomorrow, right? So yeah, and look, we try and also offer things simultaneously. It's like, you want this? Well, here's something you want. Here's a couple things that are also good for you. Like take your pick, and just put them out at the same time. Our kids will have ice cream, watermelon, uh, strawberries, and yogurt and a smoothie all on the table at the same time. It's like, you don't have to finish all this before you have ice cream. You know, they finish the ice cream like, hey, can I have more ice cream? It's like, uh, nope, that was it for, that was your ice cream, and you can have as much of the other food as you want. Right. Um, so those are just some of the things that we've been working on and focused on, or I've been focused on, and my wife too. But by no means is it the perfect thing. And there'll be a day where, we try and we don't talk about macros and calories and, things in front of them. Um, they certainly see that like we're eating differently than them. We're a little bit more intentional about the things that we're putting in our mouth. Like I try not to highlight when I'm avoiding foods, you know.
Yeah.
If like I won't say like no, I'm not having a cookie. I'll just kind of be a bit more subtle about that because I
Mm.
don't want them thinking like, oh, there's something wrong with me eating this cookie. Or say, oh, I'm saving room for my dinner, or I'm already full, or no, I'm not gonna have those right now. Maybe I'll have one later, or something like that, just to make it less about avoidance, um, and more about just like I'm choosing something else.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I mean, I'm gonna replay this part of the conversation so many times, especially like mentally. Like I
Mm-hmm.
said, being a new dad, and sometimes you know too much. Like this stuff is terrible for you, but at the same time, like let them enjoy it. And this stuff is something I'm gonna struggle with, knowing like my relationship, my struggles with food. I don't want it to trickle down to my son. So I really appreciate how you handle that, and I definitely appreciate how you said you're still figuring it out. You don't have it all figured out, so
Yeah.
that means a lot to me. I really appreciate that. This entire conversation has meant a lot to me.
I'm glad we could have it, Ryan. Thank you for,
Yeah,
you know, ma- making the reach out. And these were all good topics. I hope whoever's listening, if they're still listening, they got something from it, and happy to do it again with you sometime in the future.
I would appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot to dive into as far as nutrition, fitness, protein supplements. I want to get into all that, but we'll save it for another time. Marcus, for people listening to this that just happen to not follow you, if you're not one of those million people, please tell the people where they can follow you and work with you. And I'm genuinely serious. I want to follow up and I want to inquire about working with you because this has just been an absolutely wonderful conversation.
Appreciate that. Yeah. At Marcus Philly on Instagram, definitely probably the number one place to go. And you can also head over to my website, which is functional-bodybuilding.com. Um, and you can inquire there for either coaching or check out my online training program, Persist. You can try it out for free for a couple weeks. And yeah, it's all right there on the website.
I definitely highly recommend a follow, not just because you're on my podcast, because you are a great follow. I was telling you before we started the recording, it was like, I just love how you show simple moves. And now I go to the gym because of you and I'm doing new moves and new exercises with kind of a new mindset, not the same old, same old. It's like, oh, today I'm going to try this. Let's see how I feel the next day. And you continue to push different movements and exercises. It's like a brand new workout. It's super exciting. So even if they don't work with you, please follow you because your content on workouts, moves, nutrition, fitness, mindset, all that stuff is absolutely incredible. It's very relatable. Marcus, you're the man. Really appreciate everything you're doing and best of luck moving forward. But it sounds like you're well on your way.
Thanks, Ryan.